Now part of the Darkcast Network. Welcome to Indie Podcasts with a dark side. On July 3rd, 2018, Scott Farris came back home to his family's 10-acre property in Cherokee County, Georgia, around 11:30 p.m. Quote, "When I pulled into the driveway, you could look off in the direction where the burn pile was, and you could see it was burning. The burn pile, usually used for burning yard waste and brush, was currently glowing in the distance. Scott remembered that his father had told him that he had plans to burn some stuff there, so he initially thought nothing of it. The next day, July 4th, went by without any issues. But neither Scott or his mother, Melody Farris, had seen Scott's father, Gary, which wasn't actually unusual in this household. Then on July 5th, two of Gary's grandchildren who had spent the night at the house asked to ride the RTV, which is a rough terrain vehicle, with their grandfather, who they called Big Daddy. Quote, "I told them, I said, go ask Big Daddy to go ride it with you all. And they said they couldn't find him. This is when everybody realized that they actually hadn't seen Gary in a while. So then they started searching for him. Amanda, Gary's daughter, was already at the house and helped look for him. Their other son, Chris, came to the house to join the search. Then, when Scott went to the burn pile he'd seen on the 3rd, he saw something that shouldn't have been in the ashes. Quote, I'll never forget it until the day I die. Scott would later say that the memory is clearly etched into his mind. According to Melody, Scott's exact words were, quote, "Oh, I found him." To which she said, "What do you mean you found him?" Welcome, lambs. Welcome to Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide. This is your weekly true crime podcast that tells you cases of relationships that have turned to murder. I retell these cases thinking about the viewpoint of the victim, the victim's families, and their loved ones. So you might hear some ranting within this case. I also invite you to go ahead, take a seat, take a listen all the way to the end, and if you like my retelling, don't forget to subscribe. Did you know that another way you could subscribe is on my Patreon? You can subscribe for free, patreon.com/Love and Murder. You do get some benefits of being a free subscriber, but if you want to help me to be a voice of the victim, so then you be a voice of the victim as well. If you want to keep this podcast on the air and help keep it running, if you want bonus episodes, if you want behind the scenes, if you want to hear me mess up words in my bloopers and everything like that, then go ahead and choose one of the bonus tiers and join the Lamb Fam over in the Patreon. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. And don't forget that I just started a new series, Deadly Duos, where I tell cases of people who are in relationships who think that if you stay together, you kill together. That is only in the $10 and above tier. So if you want to hear the Deadly Duos series, then go ahead and join at the $10 and above tier, and you get all the other bonuses that other tiers get as well. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. Now, let's grab your butts, let's grab your delicious glass of apple juice, and let's get back into this Love and Murder. Police received a 911 call about human remains in a burn pit. Detective Daniel Hayes of the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office responded to the scene. Quote, I had never personally responded to a call like that ever. What he found was the charred remains of 58-year-old Gary Farris, the 300-pound patriarch of the Farris estate, now reduced to skeletal remains in the burn pile approximately 50 yards from the family home. Gary had been married to Melody for 38 years. He was a wealthy commercial real estate attorney who had 4 adult kids with his wife, Chris, Scott, Emily, and Amanda. And Gary was the one holding everything together, well, financially. He made his money as an attorney, like I said, and he specialized in commercial real estate. Melody managed their huge Cherokee County property. Gary paid for Scott's living and work expenses, while Scott ran the farm and lived in an apartment above the barn. Scott had served in the Army, but now he was back home and he was living on the property. On the outside, they might have looked like what a typical close-knit family looked like. But behind the scenes, it was more like a telenovela. I'm kidding, it probably wasn't that bad. It was more like a soap opera. Novelas are soap operas, but with more drama. So, Gary and Melody lived completely separate lives under the same roof. He stayed in a makeshift bedroom in the basement. She had the upstairs. Their marriage had been rocky for a while, and they'd been sleeping in separate rooms for years. So, on the day the police were called out, they initially considered the possibility that Gary had suffered a medical issue and fallen into the fire. However, that was quickly shut down when a bullet was discovered lodged in one of Gary's rib bones. Yeah, that'll kind of change it from accidental to homicide real quick. They inspected the property more after that and then found some of Gary's blood and then a second .38 caliber bullet in the basement of the house. So now investigators started questioning friends, families, neighbors, anybody they could find. They learned that a lot of that tension between Melody and Gary came from Melody's affairs. Affairs, plural. When investigators heard affairs, they questioned Melody, and at first, she denied everything. Well, later, investigators found a credit card in Melody's purse under the name Roy Barton. So they asked her who this Roy person was. So she said, okay, well, remember when I said I wasn't having any affairs? Well, that was a teeny tiny lie. Then she admitted to sleeping with a man named Roy Rusty Barton, a farm equipment salesman from Tennessee. She said she'd met him back in 2014 while taking care of his sick stepmother, who was also Melody's cousin, but she claimed that it had ended a year before Gary died. Melody had also been secretly involved with her sister's partner, Ted Wiley, for almost 4 years, starting around 2008. She seems to love messing with her family members' men, or is this just my imagination? Gary had suspected that she was cheating, so he'd gotten tired of it and filed for divorce in February 2010. But the case was dismissed in August. Wait, what? How can you tell somebody they're not getting divorced? Okay, hold on. I need to research this. Okay, so the AI on Google, I have to point out that it's the AI on Google, says, to dismiss a divorce petition, the petitioner must file a motion for dismissal with the court. This motion should be filed before the case has been finalized, and it may require notifying the other party and possibly setting a hearing. If the other party has filed a response, both parties must agree to the dismissal, and a judge's approval may be necessary. The dismissal removes the case from the court's docket, but it does not affect any cross petitions that may exist. If the petitioner wishes to proceed with the divorce, they must file a new petition and begin the process anew. So I guess what I'm gathering from this is either both of them changed their minds about getting divorced or Gary didn't serve Melody. I'm unclear. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. I'm kind of unclear about this still. So correct me in the comments, please. Anyway, moving on. This drama even carried over into family events. At Emily's wedding in 2016, Melody invited Rusty and it caused a scene, as I would imagine it would. Why would she bring this person to her daughter's wedding? Gary was furious. The rest of the family, they weren't happy either. Money was another big issue. Melody had access to some of Gary's accounts, but he started limiting her spending because she was using their money to spoil her boyfriends. Melody claimed that she thought she could use their debit card however she wanted, and she said she had no clue what their finances look like. Ma'am, you can use your family's money in most ways that you want to, except to cheat on your husband and fund your boyfriends. I mean, I never thought this would be something I would have to say. Then she sent a text to her friend about Gary saying, quote, I hope he dies alone in a gruesome death. Then, just days before Gary died, she was recorded on a phone call throwing a plate and screaming, quote, I can't wait till that effing man's dead. I can't wait till I don't have to live with him anymore. Gary had recorded the whole thing. Smart. Oh, and also, I now stand corrected. This marriage was a telenovela. Now, as you figured, investigators asked Melody when she saw her husband alive last. And she said that it was that evening when he came in wanting dinner, and her last words to him were, quote, "Gary, there's enough food in that refrigerator to feed Cox's army. If you don't want it, then go get something to eat." Police said that during their investigation, what started out as rumors and possible hearsay slowly turned into a case built on timelines, phone data, and things that Melody couldn't explain away. In multiple interviews, Mary gave different versions of what she said happened. The timeline didn't add up, and detectives started taking a closer look. Then investigators interviewed Rusty. He told police that Melody had said, quote, "Gary is in the burn pile." Not that Gary's missing, or even I don't know where he is, but straight up told him that Gary was in the burn pile. Rusty even said he stopped her and told her not to say another word. This was interesting to investigators because at that point in the investigation, only the killer would have known where Gary's body was. And phone records didn't help her case either. Detectives pulled up phone data and saw that Melody and Rusty were constantly talking. It didn't matter that they lived in different states. They were on the phone non-stop, even in the early hours of July 4th, which was the day before Gary's body was found. But the biggest piece of tech evidence came from Gary's phone. Since he had an Android for the win, with location services turned on, investigators could track exactly where the phone moved around the property. Between 7:58 and 9:05 a.m. on July 4th, his phone traveled from the house out to the burn pile and back to the house. And since police thinks he died on July 3rd after 10 p.m., by the time that his phone was walking back and forth, Gary was already dead. This is not The Walking Dead. If you're dead, you're dead. We don't have zombies. And the only person home during that window? You guessed it, Melody. Scott's phone was miles away from the farm, leaving at about 6:30 a.m. and not even getting back until 8 p.m. or 8:30 p.m. that day. They also tested the family's RTV that they used around the property and found Melody's blood on the gear shifter. That detail mattered because investigators believed Gary's body had been moved to the burn pile using that vehicle. Because think about it. Remember earlier I said that he was about 300 pounds, and I didn't say this part, he was 6'4"? So how could she have moved the body by herself? He was a big man. A big, big man. I mean, if you watch SpongeBob, you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, when confronted with all of this, Melody stuck to her story and tried to point the finger at Scott, her own son. Wow. She told investigators Scott and Gary had been butting heads and claimed that Gary wanted him off the farm. She said that sometimes their arguments even turned to physical fights and called her son, quote, hot-tempered. Now, I just want to point this out. Anytime a parent tries to blame their child for something so heinous, all I could think of is, what a piece of work. I mean, there are billions of people on this planet that you could point a finger at, but you choose your own child. But anyway, Scott told a different story. He said that he immediately suspected his mother. Quote, "I've always had this gut feeling, if something ever happened to my dad, that somebody needed to check her out." He said the real problem was Melody spending too much of Gary's money and disappearing for days, which, based on the evidence so far, I more believe. So even though suspicion initially fell on Scott, and despite Melody later claiming he failed the polygraph test, investigators were eventually able to rule him out. And, she never brought forth this polygraph test that he supposedly failed. But either way, polygraph tests are not reliable because he could have just been nervous. He could have been going through some stuff. I mean, his dad did just die, so. But anyways, investigators ruled him out. The biggest factor was Scott's cell phone data, which showed that he was miles away from the property during the time when Scott's phone was moving from the house to the burn pile, which I told y'all already. But also, as it was later pointed out during the trial, polygraph tests aren't reliable or admissible in court anyway, as I said before too. So basically, investigators could track Scott's phone, and during all this time, he's like literally never there. So I don't know how she's blaming him when his phone, I guess, I don't know, did he put his phone on in his friend's car and then came back, snuck back on the property? Like, how are you trying to explain this away? The back and forth and change in stories caused investigators to coin this case as the Ferris wheel, which is clever. They said that it embodied the continuous cycle of dysfunction inside the Farris family. They said that everyone had a role to play in the drama, shifting allegiances, old grudges, the silent resentments that kept the wheel spinning. No one confronted anything directly. Instead of talking to each other, family members passed messages through intermediaries, letting things build and boil over behind closed doors. And I have to say, I wouldn't be able to stand a family like this. I can't. I'm a very upfront person. I don't like talking behind people's back. If I do talk behind your back, I'm saying it to your face too. I don't like rumors. I don't like gossip. I don't like silent treatment. I don't like being passive aggressive. That would drive me nuts. At the center of all this dysfunction was a lot of money. Gary held tight control over the family's finances. Even though they were wealthy, he decided who got what and when. I mean, it's his money. If you want to be wealthy, go make your own money. What are we complaining about here? So that created serious friction within the family, especially with Melody, which I would say, ma'am, like I just said, if you want to be rich, make your money. Then nobody can tell you what to do with your money. Melody felt boxed in, cut off, and increasingly frustrated with how much control he had over his own damn money. And the tension between them only got worse as estate planning came up. The couple clashed over how to divide assets amongst the kids, and every conversation seemed to dig the hole deeper. And I mean, I guess part of the conversation was, how much could I actually spend on my boyfriends? I mean, you're trying to divide it among the kids. It's not like he's trying to divide it among his mistresses or an 18-year-old girl he said, I'm going to leave you for. Like, it's his kids. Like, where's the argument? And as I previously said, Gary had helped Scott out, covering business expenses, letting him live at the barn because, I mean, he is his son. But that didn't stop the fighting. Arguments over money, inheritance, and control stirred up resentment and divided the family even further. By the time Gary died, that wheel had been spinning for years, and no one had managed to stop it. Now, I wonder if Scott ever was fighting with his father about money, or even the rest of the children, or was this money fighting just Melody? The burning of Gary's body was viewed by investigators as a deliberate attempt to cover up a crime and destroy evidence. On top of that, Melody had bought a prepaid phone and cleaning supplies around the time of Gary's death. And I'm wondering how she's like, everything is pointing to her. There's no evidence at all saying that it was Scott. Everything is pointing to her, but she's blaming her son. Then, in a strange twist, Gary's missing wallet and phone, both of which the kids had already searched for, was just suddenly found by Melody. Look, I found it. It was sitting in the corner under that bag this whole time. In June 2019, after nearly a year of digging, investigators felt that they had what they needed. They had motive, opportunity, and evidence that just kept circling back to Melody. So she was arrested, and you'll never guess where police found her and arrested her. In Tullahoma, Tennessee. Do you remember who lives in Tennessee? That's right. She was chilling there with Rusty, to which investigators were like, I thought you said you hadn't seen him since a year before Gary's death. Melody was charged with malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, concealing the death of another, and making a false statement. The false statement charge stemmed from her lying to authorities about having extramarital affairs and about ending her relationship with Rusty. Damn. They tagged her for that too. Yo, that's funny. Rusty then tried to recant his earlier statement, claiming, oh, wait, no. I had the date. You said that burn pit, July 4th. No. She was burning something, and her pet mouse that was named Gary, he had jumped into the pit. So I thought you were talking about July 4th, 1984, where Melody's pet mouse, Gary, had jumped into the burn pit, and then Melody told me that Gary was in the burn pit. Is that okay? Can I recant my statement then? Like, seriously, he did say he got the dates wrong. Like, what are you talking about? So if it was an earlier time that she said Gary's in the burn pit, that would have meant something different? Like, what are you talking about? But the prosecutors, just like Kai, didn't believe him. They said that he was trying to protect Melody because they were still in a relationship. Like, sir, your wife murdered her husband. Why would you still be with her? Because you never know. She has a propensity to murder you too. Like, what the frick? Melody's trial started in October 2024 and lasted for 3 weeks. Judge David Cannon Jr. presided over the case. Prosecutors Jeffrey Fogus and Megan Frankish laid out the state's argument, while Melody's defense team was led by attorneys Michael Ray and John Luke Weaver. Attorney Fogus gave the opening statement, quote, "The answer to the question, who did it, sits right there. Melody Walker Farris." From the start, prosecutors focused on a straightforward theory. Melody Farris was the only person with the means, motives, and opportunity to murder her husband. She stood to gain financially. There was a $2 million life insurance policy in her name, plus Gary's multi-million-dollar assets. Prosecutors argued that the couple had been arguing about money, with Gary refusing to give Melody funds he instead directed to their adult children, which sounds about financially right. She also wanted to be with her boyfriend, and Gary stood in the way of that. Melody wanted to, quote, live happily ever after with her lover. The prosecution constructed a timeline showing that on July 3rd, 2018, Gary and Melody argued in the kitchen before she shot him. Quote, he goes downstairs trying to get away. She shoots him again. One family friend testified, quote, the strain in their relationship was no secret to those close to them, but nobody expected it would end like this. The prosecution presented a long list of evidence. Gary's phone moving after he was dead while Scott was away and only Melody was home. What Rusty told investigators. So, in addition to what I told you earlier, Rusty also admitted to their 4-year affair with Melody. When asked about wedding ring shopping, he said, quote, we talked about getting plain gold bands. So they were planning on getting married. More evidence was Gary's blood that was found in the basement, along with a .38 caliber bullet. Melody's DNA was found on the gear shifter of the Kubota and a blue shoe. Now, I don't know what they're talking about, the blue shoe. I just saw a blue shoe in passing, so I had to put it in here, the blue shoe. Text messages and recordings showed Melody's clear hatred for Gary. 3 of their children, Chris, Emily, and Scott, actually testified against their mother. Emily described her mom as aggressive and obsessed with money. Scott broke down on the stand, saying that he loved his father and had nothing to do with his death. Scott said that his mother was the one who murdered his father and that he was an easy target because he lived on the property and was former military. He said Melody was creating drama and trying to turn them against Gary. Scott also testified that when investigators told the family they'd found human remains, his mother's reaction didn't feel real. Quote, I've seen my mother cry hundreds of times, and it appeared to me to be fake. So basically what he was saying was when she was crying when they said, hey, there's human remains here, the crying that she was doing then, based on the hundreds of times he's seen his mom cry before, this one was fake. He also told the jury about things he'd seen and heard leading up to his father's death, like her history of affairs, and also hearing her say, quote, I can't wait for the day he's dead and I don't have to live with him anymore. All of these observations together are what made him certain that his mother was responsible. Then Chris talked about his parents' rocky marriage, telling the jury that his father often said, quote, "Every day with mom was the worst day of his life." Chris explicitly denied any involvement in his father's murder, distancing himself from both the crime and his mother's defense strategy. Chris also told the court that there was no funeral for his father. So basically his mother had never set up a funeral for his father. So I guess he took the preemptive strike like, you blame Scott, now you're not going to blame me. I had nothing to do with my father's death. Melody's defense team pointed the finger at Scott. In their opening statement, they countered the prosecution's narrative, saying, quote, "Where's the gun? No idea." Everything that was done in this case was tailored specifically to attempt to convict Melanie. So he's a mastermind now? Scott's a mastermind? Really? He got her blood, smeared it all over the place, got her DNA and put it where it wasn't supposed to be? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Attorney Ray said that the police suffered from, quote, confirmation bias. And they argued that Scott, not Melody, was more physically capable of killing Gary and moving his 300-pound body to the burn pile. Scott was 6'8" and 280 pounds, and Melody was 130 pounds. And then to make their point, defense attorney John Luke Weaver even wheeled in bags of rock salt to demonstrate the weight. Yeah, but did you use an ATV to wheel it into the court, or did you use a wheelbarrow? Because with an ATV, it's the vehicle pulling the weight. So literally all she had to do was back up. If she had a trailer attached, back up the trailer on the body, strap the body in, then drive the car to the burn pile, unstrap the body, and then drive away. Like, I don't understand why you're wheeling in rock salt. They also said there was no blood trail from the house to the burn pile, which, I mean, again, she put him on a car and pulled him. She could have put him on a blanket or something. There would not be a blood trail. Like the blood would have gone soaked into the blanket or whatever. And then she just burned the blanket in the burn pile. Like, what are you talking about? So the defense said, well, we're going to bring forward our own long list of evidence. Number 1, the murder weapon was never found. Number 2, Scott had access to the .38 caliber ammunition. Number 3, the blood it found in the house, they claimed, could have come from a dog bite, not a shooting. Number 4, they accused investigators of mishandling the scene, saying Scott's apartment above the barn was never searched. Number 5, the defense claimed Scott had motive too. He wanted the farm and was worried Gary was about to cut him off financially. They said that he was financially dependent on his parents. Quote, "She thought you were a mooch," to which Scott replied, "No, I wasn't." Number 6, they said Scott was quick to blame his mother, mentioning her name just 13 minutes after deputies arrived. Well, if you listen to the prosecution, he always thought it was a possibility. Amanda Bruce Farris, Gary and Melody's youngest daughter, testified for the defense, believing in her mother's innocence. She said that she would believe her mother was not guilty until proven otherwise, and expressed the pain of losing her father and the possibility of her mother spending the rest of her life in prison. Quote, "She supports her mother's innocence and believes in the justice system to find her guilty or not guilty of her father's murder." Amanda said that she would, quote, "support her father if the roles were reversed." Melody even went so far as to accuse Scott of planting the bullet in the basement just to frame her. She also said that the only reason her children were testifying against her is because they were lying for money. So are you trying to say the prosecution was paying them, or that if she went to prison, they would get the money? Because as far as I know, he was giving them the money anyway, and you would have only had the $2 million. So they still would have had more money than you in the assets and stuff. So what money are they lying for? On October 30th, 2024, the jury announced that they were deadlocked. Judge Cannon told them to keep trying. Just a few days later, on November 4th, the jury found Melody guilty on all 5 counts: malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, concealing the death of another, and making a false statement. Jurors later said that the cell phone data showing Gary's phone moving while Melody was the only one home was what convinced them of her guilt. Melody didn't testify during the trial, but got her chance to speak during sentencing. And what she said shocked everyone. Instead of apologizing or asking for mercy, she doubled down and accused Scott of killing Gary. Quote, "Not only did I not do this, I know who did. I know Scott killed his father." She claimed she spent her life protecting Scott, but now she wouldn't take the blame. She said her deceased mother had begged her to cover for him. She even asked the judge to, quote, "throw out this verdict" and become the, quote, 13th juror, insisting that she would accept punishment if she were guilty, but that she wasn't. She said that she wanted to see Scott, quote, chained and shackled and brought to justice. Judge Cannon had no patience for Melody's accusations, and he cut her off saying, quote, "You're not supposed to go into evidence at this phase of the case. Your statements need to be constrained to the punishment." Scott, as you can imagine, just was sitting there shocked in the courtroom like, what the frick? And he called this Melody's, quote, last final jabs, and said that she had, quote, taken one last turn of the knife. And then he started crying, and he said, quote, "I absolutely had nothing to do with my father's death, and it was 100% Melody Farris who murdered my father. That is the truth." Judge Cannon sentenced Melody to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, though he said that it was unlikely she would live long enough to be released. Damn. She'll be 94 by the time she's eligible. He added another 5 years for concealing Gary's death and 5 more to run concurrently for lying to investigators. He also ordered her to have no contact with her family. After the verdict, Scott said, quote, "Because we got justice for my father, we fought 6 years to get answers." Melody is now serving her sentence at Arundel State Prison in Alto, Georgia. In the end, the Ferris wheel finally came to a stop, but the damage was done. A father was murdered, a mother is in prison, and the family is fractured beyond repair. I wonder if the siblings are going to talk to Amanda because she's the only one who testified for her mother. I mean, I don't blame her, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's her mother, and she's not really sure that her mother killed her father. So you can't really be mad at Amanda. Everybody has different thought processes. Now, I could understand if she walked in and saw her mother holding the gun and, you know what I'm saying, and she was still on that stuff. I could understand that. But she didn't, and she's not sure if her mother did it. You can't really be mad at her. Despite the verdict, Melody continues to claim that she's innocent. And when asked if she believes she would walk free again, she said, quote, "I certainly hope so. I do. But I will be sitting right there behind my son in court." What an asshole. And that is the case of Melody and Gary Farris. What did you think about this case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Some of these people, I tell you, I don't understand some of these parents. Did you listen to the bonus episode that I put out this weekend about the man who ran and let his son be kidnapped? If you didn't, go ahead and listen to that. And then with that bonus episode, there was another episode attached to that one about a man who hid under the bed while his wife and child were kidnapped. Now here's this mother like literally saying, "I'll see my son in shackles." Like, oh my God. And then she had a problem with her children getting her husband's money. She wanted the money to fund her boyfriends, but she had a problem with the children getting her husband's money. I mean, can you imagine parents like that? Just, oh. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And speaking of your thoughts, let me read a couple comments here. So I'm in the Spotify right now. I'm going to read some comments from the Spotify. So these are the most recent comments. This case was World's Greatest Mom. Mother abandoned her children for years. It was the case of Kelli Bryant. The Queen of Sheba said, "Oh my God, what a story." Yeah, it goes back to these parents. This woman was a piece of work. And I will have that link to that episode in the show notes below if you missed that episode. This woman literally left her children to raise themselves while she was sitting nice, taking the money from what she was supposed to be getting from them. She took that money, she got herself another apartment, and she was sitting nice while her children were starving to death and had nothing to clean themselves with or just live, basically. Another parent for the books. So the link to that is in the show notes below. Another comment from an episode, Utah mom accused of murdering husband during divorce. This was the case of Jennifer Gledhill. Christina Bobo said, involving your parents in a murder cover-up, allegedly, is crazy. Shout out to the side dude because he would have been next for sure. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. He came out, he sang like a bird because he's not stupid to believe, kind of like Rusty in this case, he's not stupid to believe that he wouldn't have been next. The next comment comes from the case of a deadly Florida love triangle, the murder of Aileen Seiden. Christina Bobo says, I most definitely would not have called or met the father at an alternate location because apples don't fall far from the tree, and I would assume that he would want to protect his child at all costs, you know? But to each their own. 25 years for murder is crazy. Christina shouldn't have had a chance to see freedom. Growing up in law enforcement, she probably thought she was above the law. So I'm glad she received some time, but I don't think it's enough considering the facts of the case. Which I agree, Christina. Like I said in the case, I wouldn't have gone to meet him because everything is going to run through my head. I'm not meeting you at a remote location. We gonna meet right there at the police station. Oh, no. Let me take that back. Let's meet at a mall where everybody's there. Something public. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't have gone and just met him. I'd have brought people with me too. There's no way. And then the other thing is, that's what I was thinking too about her growing up in law enforcement. She thought that her father was going to make it disappear. If not that she wanted to go tell him, but she thought if he ever found out, he would just make it disappear. So I have a feeling that's what she was thinking too. Then the last comment that I'm going to read today came from actually a bonus episode that I had put out. It's titled Stabbed 30 Times, Her Throat Cut, She Lived, the Alison Botha story. This case was really something. And if you want to hear that, that's actually a bonus episode. You could hear this bonus at the $5 tier. So if you want to join the Patreon and hear this bonus, it's at the $5 tier, patreon.com/11murder. Christina Bobo says, you spoke horrific poetry in telling this episode. I cannot imagine the horror, pain, and fear Alison felt. Thank God for sending the right person to help her. Quick acting is what saved her life. Those men should have been disemboweled as punishment. It's surprising that she survived. Her resilience is powerful, courageous, and is what kept her going. I'm glad she lived a fruitful life after. I'm so angry those demons were released without protecting Alison and endangering others. Yeah, Christina, when they were released, I was shocked. I was shocked. And is the fact that they were released without even them telling her or basically asking her permission or anything like that, that was really, really shocking. And then in speaking of, the quick action saved her life and the people who stopped for her, I'm not even going to down talk the people who didn't stop for her, because with all these scams going on in the world, I might not have stopped. I might have think that she was scamming me to get me to stop so then somebody could rob me and kidnap me or something. I might not have stopped. I'm not going to 100% say I wouldn't, but it's a 50% chance. So yeah, it's a good thing that somebody stopped. I'm not talking about the people who didn't. And it's a good thing that the person who stopped was actually a vet, which, side note, if you didn't know, a vet is just as good as a doctor. People don't know that. They just think vets. But a vet could help you. If something medical were to happen to you and the only person that was on the flight, for instance, was a vet, that vet could actually help you. They're doctors too. So yeah, it's good that the person who stopped was actually a vet because he was able to, help her and keep her calm and help her medically. And that is part of what saved her life. So yeah, you should check out that story though. Go to our Patreon. It was a heart-wrenching story. It was really hard. And this was a monthly bonus, so that's at the $5 tier. So if you just want to get your monthly bonus, like one bonus a month, you could actually join at the $5 tier, and you get bonus episodes, monthly bonus episodes, case extras, and you get some other bonuses. Plus, you help just keep Love and Murder going. You become a voice of the victim, and you help me try and help other people learn to get help, like in their situations that they need to get out of, because that's something that I'm now like also focusing on, raising awareness to people who need help in getting out of their situations, letting them know that there is help available, letting them know there's no numbers to call, there's places to go, there's people you could talk to just to, help you get out of these situations. This is for domestic violence. This is for child abuse. This is for people with mental health problems. So you are helping me to spread the word about, how to get out of your situation, or how to help your situation, or how to help children who are going through horrific child abuse and you feel like you don't have a voice. So with your donation to my Patreon, you're helping this podcast stay on air, and you're helping me spread that awareness. So that's all the things that you get with being a Patreon subscriber. We have a $3 tier, which you get the commercial-free episodes and the intro-free episodes. We just get into the case. And with the $3 tier, you also get case extras. So pictures, videos of the case, stuff like that. The $5 tier, you get everything that's in the $3 tier, plus you get one monthly bonus. Then we have the $10 tier, where you get everything in the $3 and the $5 tier, plus you get another monthly bonus, plus you get the Deadly Duos series that just dropped. And then I think, what is there, a $20 tier? A $20 tier or something like with the other tier that's above the $10 tier. With that, you're a sponsor of the show. You get everything in the below bonuses, plus you're a sponsor of the show. So basically that tier is for like people who want to do a shout out. Maybe they have a business that they want me to shout out, or, you just want me to do a little shout out. That's the $20 tier, plus you get everything below that. Or you just wanted to just give the podcast a little bit more money a month. So that's what the $20 tier is about. But I really just push the other tiers. So if this sounds like something that you want to be a part of, then head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder, and choose any one of the bonus tiers and become part of the Lamb Fam. But if you just want like a social media area to keep up to date with Love and Murder, see everything that I'm posting all over social media, but with social media, you don't always get everybody's posts. If you want that, plus you want to be part of the newsletter. So everything that I post online and my newsletter and everything like that, that goes into my Patreon as well. So you don't miss anything I post. So if that's all you want, then you could just join for free as well. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. So that is all I have for you today. Please leave your comments below. I do love reading your comments, and I do try and get it in on some episodes. So please leave your comments below. I do want to hear from you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Thank you for everything you do for Love and Murder Podcast. And I will see you in the next episode. Oh, and as we end each full episode, I want to remind you that it's, say it with me now, all love and no murder, y'all. Stay tuned for my commercial guest. Bye.
Scottish Murders is hosted by me, Dawn, and is a multi-award shortlisted victim-focused podcast covering the murders of those from or living in Scotland. We tell each victim's story in a respectful, sensitive, unsensational and unopinionated way. So why not join us wherever you listen to your podcasts and ensure you never miss an episode of Scottish Murders.